one of you has an amazing story, and a story that you grow with your country and with the economies of this group. Every one of you is an entrepreneur to begin with in your own field. Let's begin with Leslie. What about your story? New Development Bank.
New Development Bank was started exactly 2 years ago. It seems like yesterday for me, but 2 years have flown by. We have a real sense of achievement today because arriving here with no staff, no systems, no processes really to underpin a bank.
Started from single chair and single table.
That is exactly right. I also feel that in some ways this experience replicates for me another experience I had in 1994 when during the transition to democracy, where I went into a new government which had a completely fresh mandate, the first democratically elected government.
In South Africa.
Put in place new laws, new systems, hire staff. There's something about that newness that is replicated in the New Development Bank experience. Yeah. And also coming here with the rise of China and the sense of dynamism that is in China, despite the slowdown in Chinese economy over the last few years, that still a 6.5% annual growth rate economy.
Yeah.
We could feel that energy.
That energy, I guess, Jane also has a say here because she's running one of the most prominent Chinese travel companies. So how did that startup happen for you, for this company?
Sure.
And also, how is that likely linked with your partners from other BRICS countries?
We were founded in 1999 through the hard work of our young employees with an average age of 25
Oh
to
my God, can you imagine that?
Yeah, we have developed a strong network. Now we have 300 million registered users served by our young employees. We are the largest online travel agency in Asia and second largest online travel agencies globally. In China, about 20% of the people are engaged directly or indirectly with travel. Therefore, Ctrip creates lots of job opportunities for millions of families in China. When I joined the company 12 years ago, our market cap was only 500 million, and now
RMB.
USD. Now our market cap exceeded 30 billion. Around the world. So
wait a minute, 30 billion, that's you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
60 times in 12 years. And it's still growing very strong.
This is a very fresh example of how companies in these BRICS countries are actually growing over time. In China is this case, like Jane explained, but what about Atul in India?
Well, for me, my journey started in 1977 when I came to China, and it's been a dream run. And
how come you were in China so long ago?
Well, time flies, and I think it's just the beginning. The best period of our lives are in front of us, and we are all ready for that. I have worked with many Indian companies, and I've been with the Chamber for the past 15 years. And what we are seeing is the bilateral trade has gone from somewhere in the range of $200 million to $70 billion today.
You mean China and India?
Yes. So we are also part and parcel of trying to encourage the people-to-people relationship, business-to-business relationship. And I think these two great nations, which have a joint population of more than 2.5 billion people, are very important for the real growth of the world. And I feel privileged to be part of that.
Yeah, when we talk about BRICS, people are still questioning from outside the emerging market economies, saying, really? Are you really a group? Are you still a group? Can you still be a group? Leslie.
Look, there's no question that the 5 countries have very unique, distinctive differences in terms of size, in terms of culture, institutions, history, and so on. But there's such a much deeper, stronger sense of common aspirations that form the glue of this BRICS formation. And you've seen that over the last 9 years, how not just BRICS, sort of from a business and economic perspective, but in culture, universities, education, law,
Absolutely.
Diplomacy, in every endeavor, there's been collaborative efforts. I believe that these will eventually also result in more institutional forms. For example, we have a BRICS Business Council, which we are just signing a memorandum of understanding with as a new development bank, where we're going to look at how can we deepen our links in each of the 5 countries to ensure that we can do and fund more private sector involvement in infrastructure.
That's right.
So in short, I believe that BRICS definitely has a future. the differences are not seen as areas of weaknesses. The differences can be amplified in various ways to become strengths. But what I'm saying is that we each have very unique differences. Technological change today is a real equalizer because we don't need the strength. We can overnight become a leading player in any industry.
But you know, when you talk about the equalizer, is it real equalizing? Some would say, Jane, for example, your company, one of those Chinese ones, are also taking over and acquire some of the company, let's just say, in India at this point. So people are saying, are the bigger players getting all the cakes? Are the smaller ones feeling losing out? What would you say, Jane?
In the interconnected world, investing or being invested by some companies is a way to collaborate
That's
further.
true.
So for example, one of our major shareholders is Booking, the largest online travel agencies, and Ctrip is the second largest travel agencies. Through that investment, we work very closely as good partners. Customers from both sides enjoy each other, enjoy both of the inventories a lot. So instead of having a hostile attitude, we always try to maximize the shared interest. Only then both sides of the countries, people in these countries will benefit.
Well, they say, well, the Chinese talk about the shared interest. Are they really sharing the interest? Can you give us some specific examples, Jane?
So for example, Chinese people have strong demand. They want to travel. They're very curious.
Oh my
They're
God, if you go to
adventurous.
the holiday season and go to the airport,
Right.
Leslie, you know that.
Right. So that demand needs to be fulfilled by somebody, by some country. And that's the opportunity for those countries that's afraid of change. They will feel very negative. Oh, Chinese are taking over us. But in reality, if you take this opportunity, move along with the trend, welcome these people, build more hotels, build more railways, build more airlines. That's a wonderful opportunity to
Right.
boost the GDP
This
for
is
these
how
local
you deal
people.
with it, right? What kind of attitude, what approach?
Well, first of all, I'll go back on the political part
Go
of
ahead.
the BRICS thing, which I think is a very important thing. We saw the issues of the border between India and China, and I think BRICS has played a very important part in bringing them together. I think this is also one of the ways of looking at things, that when there is more interaction with people, it is good for everybody. And now we have 5 more countries who are going to be present in the BRICS summit in Xiamen this year, which will help more people to get together. So the people-to-people relationship, what Ctrip is doing is also creating the people-to-people bridge of people from India going to the world, or the Chinese people who have become much more affluent in the past 30 years to be able to travel abroad and become really international in their thinking. So traveling is, I think, a very important part of the growth of China.
Jane Yu has won the heart of Atul already,
Absolutely.
totally 120%.
Yeah.
But Atul, what
Oh,
about
totally,
that?
when
Are
she
the bigger
told-
parties getting all the interest? Are the smaller parties feeling losing out?
I think we have to have these pockets of excellence. The Chinese model of development was the opening up of these zones, which really created the new China of today.
You mean
And
the
I think-
development zones, the
Yes,
experiment zones?
Totally. And now these companies like Ctrip, Alibaba, Indian, TCS, Taras, and the other companies like Reliance, they're all working to create global businesses which create value for everybody, all the stakeholders. That is most important.
I think that big companies, Tian, are not the creators of new jobs. In each of our economies, in South Africa, in Brazil, in India, as Atul has just indicated, it's entrepreneurs, in China as well. It's these new businesses that stimulate new growth. So there's often a critique that the large corporations are the ones that get the bigger parts of the cake. I'm sure other people are inspired by Jane's story around Ctrip, who want to maybe create new ventures because our economies are so large and developing. As Atul has said, just look at the demographics. India will continue to urbanize, will continue, more and more people will move into the middle class. You need to build roads, you need to provide services to people. So there's scope and opportunity that comes from that growth. which is where new entrepreneurs can flourish in that environment.
So you do think that these entrepreneurs that's likely to really bring a lot of vitality to our economies on the BRICS stage also?
Absolutely. In fact, in the work that we do, traditionally, multilateral banks like New Development Bank provided funding mainly to governments and to state-owned enterprises. We will, in 2018 moving forward, also lend to the private sector, because the private sector today are playing a much bigger role, or an increasingly important role, in the provision of infrastructure, whether it's broadband, in terms of high-speed internet services, whether it's most of the independent power producers in renewable energy are all private companies, the building of toll roads, rail and so on. So there's new opportunity for private companies to play a role in infrastructure, and we want to finance and facilitate that.
But I think, Temi, if I could add here, that the big companies are creating the real human resource which is going out and creating these new companies. So we should not look down upon the bigger companies. They are creating this human resource.
Members, big giant companies.
So, these people are the people who have set up Ctrip and Alibaba and all these people. So we need to give them an opportunity to get new skills, look at an international level and do things differently. And I think for people in China who are in startups, people in India who are in startups, people in South Africa who are in startups, we require a global market. And for that, we need to work together.
Beautifully said. And you're watching BRICS Growth and Solutions, a special program of World Insight with Tian Wei, featuring the BRICS Summit in Xiamen. We'll be back after this. Welcome back. You're watching World Insight with Tian Wei, our special program here in Xiamen, marking the BRICS in this city. I'm joined here in our special studio on the site by Leslie Maasdorp, Jane Sun, and Atul Dalakoti. Earlier you told your own personal stories, your understanding of the so-called growth and the potential. But what about the realities? A lot of people are asking among the BRICS economies, are you really cooperating? Atul, what would you say?
I personally believe that economies which are similar trade the most. So from the trading perspective, if you see, there's a lot of trade between South Africa and China. There's a lot of trade between India and China. There's a lot of trade with Brazil and China. So trading is growing. So that's not a problem. I think even if you see US and Europe, they trade the most. They are very similar economies. So that I'm not afraid of competition. This is a cooperative effort.
The question is, what kind of competition?
The cooperation has to be, because I'll keep away from competition, but look at cooperation. And the cooperation has to be in the areas of new businesses, in the areas of energy, and especially in green energy. I think that's the next frontier. India has met its goals and has set very aggressive goals for new energy. We are trying to put up 100 smart cities. There's a great opportunity for Chinese companies and other BRICS nations to come and be part of this growth. So I think the future is going to be amazing for people who are ready to cooperate.
If I
and
understand
BRICS
your
is a
part
good platform.
right, you're saying, cooperation and the competition, whichever, innovation is the key for all of us to grow. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Right.
And I think that there is a space somewhere, and people jokingly say there should be a new word called co-opetition between cooperation and competition, because it is not a zero-sum game. It does not mean that because China has world-class companies in e-commerce that South Africa, in its endeavor to establish those companies, have to now try and block China out. As Atul has articulated, we can actually benefit from each other. To give you an example, we have a world-class financial services and banking system in South Africa. The banks are rated in the top 5 in the world. Our governance, our stock exchanges, again, are ranked in the top 3 in the world. Each of the countries have unique world-class capabilities. And if we can leverage off each other, learn from each other, form unique partnerships, we can build that competition, that space.
But we have a lot of desire to form partnerships. The question is it the desire more top-down or actually bottom-up?
There's only so much that can happen from a top-down perspective.
We all agree that, right?
Governments play a very important role to create an enabling environment, loosen the rules, create the right policy, regulatory and legislative frameworks for entrepreneurs to take up those opportunities. I don't think BRICS mechanisms can choreograph all of these partnerships. They will come from people with vision, with imagination, with creativity, who have an idea, and who will, after this program, phone Atul and say, "I've got an idea to explore business in India between South Africa and a company."
Get your mobile phone ready.
I'm ready for that.
Yeah.
Because I personally feel that it's very important that the growth comes from the new companies, the new economy. Because if you see the market cap of Ctrip today, you couldn't, in the old economy days, think a company could achieve that. But today it's a new world. So let's try to work together on these areas. Let the new people, let the young people get into it. So the people-to-people relationship, which I always talk about, is, I think, the bedrock, which we need to do anything and everything possible to get people to meet each other, to be with each other, to understand each other. And traveling is one of the best ways.
It is one of the best ways.
Agree.
But Atul, one of the things is that what people read about our countries, let's just say in the media, are actually quite far away from what you have just told them. So people from outside our world would be very confused, say, which is the real picture? Are you guys, on the border of the conflicts of the picture, or actually sitting together, talking about cooperation, talking about taking off the economy, particularly in innovation? Which is the bigger picture and the real picture? I'll let you respond to that too. Atul first, very briefly.
Because I think the fact that you are mentioning it makes it much more important for us to get together. There are people who think differently, and the number of people who think differently is sizable. Let's not try to
brush it off.
Yeah, brush it off, and say it doesn't exist. It does, and that's why for globalization, for real globalization, which is a win-win globalization for everybody, we have to work together. We have to get this message across to the people that this is the only way to move forward in this.
There are a lot of things, Jane.
Yeah.
He said, she said kind of thing that we heard from people. But one of the things to do is to really go there
to see it,
and
absolutely.
Really to meet people.
Yeah, so we have the privilege to send people, 15 million people abroad, which creates directly and indirectly 30 million job opportunities around the world. Through these travel, people have people-to-people interactions, so they get to know each other very well. So when I went to Middle East, before I do that, I thought it was full of bombs, the chaotic situation. But when I was there, people are lovely people. They share the same common value as people here in BRICS countries. They love their family, love their life, love the job opportunities. We are all the same. We are all human beings. Through travel, I think people were able to see each other face to face. It's the best people-to-people diplomatic method.
Same with Africa. Same. People think about Africa, they thought it's almost one country. It's not. It's a rising continent. South Africa, for example.
South Africa is the only country in Africa as part of BRICS, but we very much aspirationally see ourselves as carrying the collective aspirations of almost 1 billion people. Right? We hope that over time, as the BRICS expand in the years to come, because make no mistake, we are living through an era now of a rise in the importance of emerging markets, but not at the exclusion of all the others that are outside of BRICS. It's only 5 countries for now. Let's take Africa. Africa today, is about a $2 trillion economy, 53 countries, very diverse, but it is a rising continent. It's a rising continent in every respect. It's got the largest number of young people in terms of youth, and these people are able to embrace technology faster. Kenya, for example, Kenya is a very developed economy on the eastern part of the continent, but they developed world-class technologies that has now been adopted elsewhere in the world.
We don't want to say there's no challenge. There are a lot of challenges. We need to talk about realities too. We were not just focusing on the rosy picture, but rather telling people what the real picture is. Now, what about these challenges, Leslie?
Very briefly, I would say firstly...
Sorry, I become you first on the challenges.
In each of our 5 countries, 4 countries, except for India. India has been recording record levels of growth to date. But all of our economies have very unique challenges on the economic growth perspective, because...
If you ask the Indians, they have their own challenges too. We'll let Atul talk about that.
Sure,
Go ahead, Leslie.
But I think the important point here, and you've already touched on the word balance, we need to find a way to have balance, and I would add the word sustainable growth. This became a big theme in Hangzhou at the G20 last year. G20 economies are focused on getting balanced growth. Why is balance and sustainable important? We want to have a growth trajectory that makes our economies less amenable to this boom-bust sort of phenomena. So in other words, we want to make sure that we undertake all of the structural reforms in the economy to have a set of foundations for longer-term growth. You can have commodity prices going up, and South Africa and Brazil, two very strong commodity-based economies, can flourish. And then when commodity prices go down, you go through a period of a decline again. So we've got to find a way to develop those industries. Just the tourism. South Africa is a beautiful country. So amongst our 5 countries, there are so many innovative, imaginative things we can do to begin to stimulate. But the answer does not lie in short-term initiatives, unfortunately. It's all about lifting the productive base of the economy, directing our investment towards new sectors, investing in infrastructure, leveraging of technology, and so on. There are unfortunately no short-term quick fixes on this growth question that you posed.
That's very true. And quick fixes usually don't work well. We all know that through the decades of development. Atul, what about you?
Well, first of all, I'll thank my colleague to have said that India is growing well. I think we have a great demographic advantage. We have 75% of our people under the age of 35.
Yeah.
So we are going to see for the next 20 years an amazing amount of development happening in India.
But you know, just one quick question. What if there are AI? What if there are more robots? You know, it's going to take the place of the very strong labor force that you have. Will that be still an advantage or quote-unquote disadvantage?
Yeah, because you see, when we were kids, and I'm still a kid now, but still I've grown in age. And in these years, technology has moved very quickly. But the world is a better place, 100% about that. So that's not an issue here. The issue is it going to be inclusive growth? No. Is it going to be a green growth? Is it sustainable? I think India has a infrastructure deficit, huge deficit. We, according to me, need at least $2 to $3 trillion invested in the next 20 years in infrastructure in India to try to bring it to the stage of where China is today. So this is a great opportunity for all the countries. The BRICS countries together today have a GDP of $17+ trillion.
That's right.
And they have a great human resource which is present in these countries, which has to work on opportunities. Pitching for growth is the most important.
Pitching for growth, and you have to have common consensus as to how to achieve those growth as well. So Jane, what exactly is going to help us to guarantee, at least to a certain extent, growth?
Yeah, I think I'm very excited about the challenge. Challenge represents opportunity. Whichever company, whichever country can overcome these challenges will excel. So every time I saw a customer complain, something that we're not doing well, I'm excited about it because once it's solved, it's a new opportunity.
Pain points.
Yeah, so every time we have a challenge, the country with open-mindedness will win. China, BRIC country, India, and all of the countries within this group has the spirit to encourage the grassroots entrepreneurship. So I'm very positive that BRICS country will take the leadership through these challenges. In my mind, technology investment will enable us to overcome these challenges. It will create the scalability in the global places.
It's amazing, ladies and gentlemen, that we are sitting here. Imagine, more than 10 years ago, nobody would think about such an opportunity that these emerging economies are sitting together. And individual representatives like you are here with all of us. I think you, coming from the 60s and the 70s generation, by the way, I don't want to reveal your age, but anyway, we're all young at heart, and yet it's amazing what we have experienced.
Absolutely, absolutely.
It's making history, simply put. How is it to function as an individual in this process of making history? I really want to get a personal insight of that from every one of you.
I think it's just the beginning. What it really means to me personally is to be a better human being. And I'm saying it in the real value of living with a lesser carbon imprint, being able to mentor more people and work with them in cross cultures. I think that is most important. So I always come back to the people-to-people friendship that we are creating, that we need to create further. And this new religion of friendship is going to help us move forward. China has done an amazing job of taking more than 400 million people out of poverty. We need to do that in India. And we have to work together and to work in a more sustainable, in a more harmonious way and get the desired results.
Atul is using one phrase, the religion of friendship. But Jane, what about to you?
I think
making history on a personal basis.
Absolutely. I think our generation is extremely blessed. My grandparents' generation, they were suffered during the Second World War. So our generation carries the dream for 3 generations to go abroad. I feel excited. I think we finally have the opportunity to carry on their dreams to go abroad. And I'm very positive for the future generation. It's our ambition to grow them and go to the better future.
Not just going abroad, but also be a major player among all of us to be on the international stage.
Absolutely.
Leslie.
I agree wholeheartedly with what Atul and China said. We're living through such exciting times. We are blessed to see all of these historic changes, the rise of our own countries, the rise of emerging markets, the possibilities of technology. However, Tian, it's very important that we recognize large numbers of people are still left behind. Inequality has increased, so globalization has produced all of these benefits and prosperity and lifting nations. As they say, a rising tide lifts all the ships. However, large numbers of people remain without access to economic opportunities, remain without quality education, healthcare services, healthy drinking water, and so on. So much more need to be done so that this globalization touches everyone's lives in the BRICS countries.
We want to be cool-headed, but at the same time, I see the lights really shining in your eyes. Thank you so much for sharing with us.